فصل في الحث على طلب العلم والعمل والتعليم. واطلب علوم الدين وارقى إلى اليقين، فالعلم قوت القلب فيه رضاء الرب.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Radhiyallahu ankum minna ankan. Muslims are in concerted agreement that all knowledge comes from God, and we also know that the manner of its arrival and the faculties and senses that receive and interpret it are distinctly not the same, since all knowledge comes from God and is interpreted by the soul through its spiritual and physical faculties. It follows that the most suitable definition would be that knowledge with reference to God as being its origin is the arrival, husul, in the soul of the meaning of a thing or an object of knowledge, husulu ma'na aw suratu shay' fi nafs, and that with reference to the soul as being its interpreter, knowledge is the arrival, usul, of the soul at the meaning of a thing or an object of knowledge. Usulun nafs ila ma'na ashay'. We have said earlier that the world of nature as depicted in the Holy Quran is like a great open book, and every detail therein encompassing the farthest horizons and our very selves is like a word in that great book that speaks to man about its author. Now the word as it really is a sign, a symbol, and to know it as it really is to know what it stands for, what it symbolizes, what it means. To study the word as word, regarding it as if it had an independent reality of its own, is to miss the real point of studying it. For regarded as such, it is no longer a sign or a symbol, as it is being made to point to itself, which is not what it really is. So in like manner is the study of nature, of anything, any object of knowledge in creation pursued in order to attain knowledge of it, if the expression as it really is taken to mean its alleged independent reality, essentially and existentially, as if it was something ultimate and subsistent, then such study is devoid of real purpose, and pursuit of knowledge becomes a deviation from the truth, which necessarily puts into question the validity of such knowledge. For as it really is, a thing or an object of knowledge is other than what it is, and that other is what it means. So just as the study of words as words leads to deviation from the real truth underlying them, in the same way the preoccupation in philosophy with things as things leads to the erroneous ordinary level of experience belief in the existence of their alleged essences outside the mind, whereas in reality the so-called essences are only mentally posited. A thing like a word is in reality ultimately a sign or a symbol that is apparent and inseparable from another thing not equally apparent, in such wise that when the former is perceived, the other, which cannot be perceived and which is of one predicament as the former, is known. What we have outlined is in fact a summary exposition of the Quranic concept of ayah, referring to words and things. That is why we have defined knowledge epistemologically as the arrival of the soul of the meaning of a thing, or the arrival of the soul at the meaning of a thing. The meaning of a thing means the right meaning of it, and what is considered to be the right meaning is in this context determined by the Islamic vision of reality and truth as projected by the Quranic conceptual system. We may now recall our earlier reference to the relevance obtained between tafsir and ta'wil as valid methods of approach to knowledge and scientific methodology respecting our study and interpretation of the world of nature, and its significance in our conception of knowledge and education. In the same way that tafsir and ta'wil will apply to the Holy Quran, involving its entire conceptual system, its reflected meanings in the hadith and the sunnah and in the things of the empirical world, so is the book of the world of nature to be interpreted by scientific methods emulating those of tafsir and ta'wil, treating the things of the empirical world as words and signs, and symbols operating in a network of conceptual relations that altogether describe an organic unity reflecting the Holy Quran itself. In this way also, the Holy Quran is the final authority that confirms the truth in our rational and empirical investigations. What we are saying is that knowledge, as referring to meaning, consists of the recognition of the proper places of things in the order of creation, such that it leads to the recognition of the proper place of God in the order of being and existence.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we are resuming from the last time where we began deliberating on the nature of knowledge, which is indicated by Professor Attas in his definition of education as that something which is progressively instilled in man. We began the time before that with the discussion of the nature of man. And so, in the midst of our discussion, we were trying to understand what is knowledge. And that the discussion pertaining to knowledge with regards the worldview of Islam is that we are to know and to recognize that all knowledge comes from God. All knowledge comes from God. And what knowledge is meaning. Yes, what knowledge is meaning. And there is the function of man in interpreting knowledge, and that is through his faculties, both spiritual and physical. As for its spiritual faculties, the seat of cognition is in the heart. As for the physical faculties, both internal and external, this refers to the five senses and the faculties of the intellect, as we have discussed previously. Yes, imagination, estimation, what is called the common sense, including, of course, memory and several others. It follows that the most suitable definition would be that knowledge with reference to God as being its origin is the arrival in the soul of the meaning of a thing or an object of knowledge. Yes, husul ma'na aw suratu shay' fi nafs, and that with reference to the soul as being its interpreter, knowledge is the arrival or wusul of the soul at the meaning of a thing or an object of knowledge. Wusul an-nafs ila ma'na ash-shay'. Now, as we know, this description or this word an-nafs, when used in the Islamic literature, refers to two things, just as the qalb refers to two things which are interrelated. The nafs may mean the very essence or the substance of man, which is meant here. The other meaning of the nafs refers to his animalistic aspect, the source of hawa, that which is not referred to here. Yes, and as we know that the nafs of man, the very reality of man, is possessing of such faculties as the qalb, which is the organ of cognition, the intellect, al-aqal, the organ that binds meaning, and then the ruh, which is the ultimate spiritual reality of man. When the meaning of something arrives in the soul of a person, it is meant to say that the person now understands the place of that thing as in terms of its spiritual reality within the order of being and existence. And since Professor Attas has defined it in both directions, that it depends on, of course, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's gift to arrive for man to arrive at knowledge, and also at the same time man has to prepare, or the soul has to prepare itself in order to receive that object of knowledge. So therefore it is a dual movement. yes, the movement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the Saqi, yes, who is the giver, which is said amongst the Sufis as Saqi Baqi. Yes, the giver remains. Yes, the giver is ever ready to give to man. But what is the difference is that man perhaps may have not been observant of the requirements of receiving knowledge. And as Professor Attas has said elsewhere, particularly in chapter 5 of Islam and Secularism, on the chapter The De-Westernization of Knowledge, he mentions there that meaning may escape and may elude our rational and empirical observations. Yes, the rational observation of something, i.e. its interpolation with our intellect, may not give to us the meaning of something, just as the empirical experience of something may not give us something, may not give us the meaning of a thing. So then Professor Attas proceeds to discuss the nature of the world, or the world of nature. As depicted in the Quran, is like a great open book, Al-Kawn, yes? And every detail encompassing the furthest horizons and our very selves is like a word in that great book that speaks to man about its author. Now the word as it really is a sign, a symbol, and to know it as it really is to know what it stands for, what it symbolizes, what it means. To study the word as word, regarding it as if it had an independent reality of its own, is to miss the real point of studying it. For regarded as such, it is no longer a sign or a symbol, as it is being made to point to itself, which is not what it really is. And as we know, the contemplation of Western man in the 2,500 years experience since the ancient Greeks have been concerned about the world, the word as word, which makes it lose its meaning. Of course, they tend at different times of their history to focus on different aspects of this existence. Franz Brentano, whose thesis perhaps Martin Heidegger or Edmund Husserl came across, was on the many senses of being in Aristotle, gave us an understanding that the ancient Greeks tried to understand reality based on how reality can be categorized, i.e. Aristotle, when trying to ask what is it, or the ipseity of a thing, or the quiddity of a thing, will give us several possible means to answer this question, which includes its substance, its quantity, its relation, al-infi'al, its suffering and action, and so on and so forth. But the Muslim, or the one who understands meaning, will say that meaning perhaps may not be in any one of those 10 categories. Yes, meaning may not be in any one of those categories. The meaning of a thing ultimately is understood as ayat, yes, in which let us say within the great symphony, yes, within this great symphony, it is the song that is being sung, that is being presented, is the ultimate meaning of the individual members of the choir, so to speak. So, as we read in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ard. So Allah gathers together several phenomena. First, creation. Not just the act of the existence of the heavens and the earth, but the act of the creation. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ard. In the act of the creation of the heavens and the earth. Wa ikhtilaf, yes, and also the changing of the days and night. La ayat. That these are signs. Yes, these are signs for those who are in possession of meaning, or those who are in possession of intellect. So if we reflect upon this, it is not just the observation of phenomena that grants us meaning, because as we know, as when we study the metaphysics of phenomena, phenomena is not just things or essences as they appear before our intellect. Because things in existence undergo change, corruption, decay, birth. Things, as within the Islamic worldview, is created. They go out of creation. They undergo change. So all of these things is summarized within that compact verse in the Quran. Yes, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points to things, but also the fact that things undergo changes. Yes, ikhtilafil layli wan nahar, the changing of the days and night. La ayatin li ulil albab. And so for those who are in possession of intellect, they will then understand, yes, the meaning of everything. The meaning of everything as it represents is that they are all athar, that they are all effects of the creative activity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they, upon reflection, grant us better knowledge of the attributes of God, the actions of God, the names of God, and ultimately even the essence of the creator of the universe. So therefore, once they have discerned the meaning of everything, once they have discerned the meaning of this great symphony, yes, and as they stand, as we know, as we have a semblance of this experience, perhaps when we have observed such a brilliantly conducted orchestra, that we cannot help but stand in ovation, yes, for as long as we can extend it. Yes, similarly, those who contemplate and reflect upon the reality of the creation and the universe and how we come into existence, how in the revolutions of the stars and the revolutions of the celestial objects, how life is supported in this earth, and how the various grains and rain that is being sent, and the plants and the animals and man, how we partake of this great book of existence, then that man will be contemplating, remembering God day and night, yes, in all possible circumstances, sitting, standing, while resting down. And the result of their discovery would be that, our Lord, certainly you have not created all of these things in vain. Yes? And after having arrived at that strong conviction that there is a real creator, that there is a creator, that this creator has now revealed himself via the Quran, and that this creator have outlined for us the path to salvation, they then, out of that realization, yes, meaning to say, once the meaning have arrived in themselves, they say, save us from hellfire. It becomes certain for them, yes, that whatever the depictions of the lives to come, yes, from the resurrection to the trials and tribulations of the afterlife, to the great judgment, and then the narrow bridge and the pool of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam until the final entry into paradise or descent into hellfire. These are all certain as the great meanings of everything. To study the word as word, on the other hand, yes, to regard it as if it had an independent reality of its own, is to miss the real point of studying it. For regarded as such, it is no longer a sign or symbol. So in like manner is the study of nature, of anything, any object of knowledge in creation, pursued in order to attain knowledge of it. If the expression as it really is, yes, this is in a sense an homage or a reference to the direction of Western philosophy in the 20th century. In particular, we can say the Heideggerian notion of philosophy is to study being as being, to study the very act of existing, is to focus on man, yes, Dasein, they say, the being that experiences time, and trying to perform research on this experience of existing and what it consists of. Heidegger promises a follow-up, yes, to the reflection of man's experience of existence, which was never fulfilled. But and that is because the meaning can never be discerned in such a way. You can never arrive at the meaning even of your very self, even though in your very self is a sign. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, that the signs of God are hidden in the horizons, or to be discerned from contemplating about the horizons, and also in our very selves, yes, until it becomes clear that He is the truth. Or in another verse, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ, and in your very selves is a sign, أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ, do you not see? But studying it as if it was something ultimate and subsistent, then such a study is devoid of real purpose, and the pursuit of knowledge becomes a deviation from the truth, which necessarily puts into question the validity of such knowledge. How can such knowledge be truly knowledge when it bears no meaning whatsoever? How can the study of nature, yes, where they try to invent ever bigger tools and instruments to study the micro level, yes, ever bigger tools to study ever smaller aspects of the world, ever further distances of the world, where they try to record, yes, the silence of the night and the brightness of the day, where they try to count the sands on mountains and all of these actions, but never arriving at meaning. Yes. For as it really is, a thing or an object of knowledge is other than what it is, and that other is what it means. Yes, that other is what it means. So just as the study of words as words leads to deviation from the real truth underlying them, in the same way the preoccupation in philosophy with things as things leads to the erroneous ordinary level of experience, belief in the existence of their alleged essences outside the mind, whereas in reality the so-called essences are only mentally posited. Have we said? Okay. So as we say here, that essences are only mentally posited. At the beginning of the 20th century, Bertrand Russell, in his book, I suppose, Introduction to Philosophy, he deliberates on phenomena, or on our knowledge of the external world. Perhaps that's the name, the title of the work. He mentions how the sciences of physics and the various other sciences have revealed to us that things are not as they really are. Yes, at the subatomic level, at the molecular level, at the various other levels that has now been discovered. Yes, we are only participants in events. Yes, reality is process, as Alfred Whitehead had said. Basically, the perception, it is only due to our perception that things appear stable, that things appear to have essences. These are mentally posited, as it were. Yes. A thing like a word is in reality ultimately a sign or a symbol that is apparent and is inseparable from another thing not equally apparent in such wise that when the former is perceived, the other, which cannot be perceived and which is of one predicament as the former, is known. What we have outlined is in fact a summary exposition of the Quranic concept of ayah as referring to words and things. And that is why we have defined knowledge epistemologically as the arrival of the soul, as in the soul of the meaning of a thing, or the arrival of the soul at the meaning of a thing. The meaning of a thing means the right meaning of it. And what is considered to be the right meaning is in this context determined by the Islamic vision of reality and truth as projected by the Quranic conceptual system. We may now recall our earlier reference to the relevance obtained between tafsir and ta'wil as valid methods of approach to knowledge and scientific methodology respecting our study and interpretation of the world of nature and its significance in our conception of knowledge and education. So now, once we try to understand, therefore, the meanings of things as things, we find that the Quran's conceptual system allows for a fine understanding of the various things in the world. Some things are meant for man's survival. Some things, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, some animals are created in order that man can arrive at places that they could only do so with extreme difficulty without the assistance of such animals. And some other animals are raised as cattle to provide for man's sustenance, and certainly sustaining grains in such a way. So these are all these let us say things, or these animals, plants. They come in the Quranic conceptual system as part and parcel of man's cycle of existence, particularly to maintain and sustain his bodily existence. And some, as the Quran has pointed out, yes, subhanallah, that some aspects of nature has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a means for man to recover and to develop the science of medicine. Yes, some are as cures to the maladies that men suffer, and some others are created for man to appreciate their beauty. And other things in the realm of creation exist also for the sake of man's accounting, like the celestial objects, yes, the stars and their positioning has been there for man to discern direction, and also at the same time, yes, as a matter of calculating the differences in the seasons, again for man to support their biological existence. Their biological existence, on the other hand, is a means for them to practice their way of living as servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then over and on top of the things which are existing from plants and animals and the celestial objects and the rains that has been sent to cause plants to grow and so on and so forth, there are over and on top of those laws which has been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order that society can be supported, and that is because, yes, the existence of society is a means through which man can more fully enact his way of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once we study this further and further, once we study the Quranic conceptual system as a whole, we will understand that there is a brilliant panorama of existence, of which everything possesses their degrees and their importance. And the sensitive beings, as morally conscious and let us say God conscious beings, will understand the relative places of the things, and they will understand ultimately that they all point to their Creator. And some, of course, as we know, within this overall system, there has been Muslims amongst the theologians, the metaphysicians, and the philosophers that have tried to develop, to develop their cosmology, to develop their metaphysics, to develop their physics in relation to the conceptual system of the Quran. As we know, the Mutakallimun developed in contradistinction to the elemental metaphysics of an Aristotle and the Greeks, what they call an atomistic metaphysics. And atomism was developed, yes, the discussion of Jawhar and A'rad ultimately is to explain how the universe is ever dependent on a creator, that the universe is new, that it has an absolute beginning and it will have an absolute end. And out of this, they explain the existence of time also. Some others amongst the metaphysicians developed the metaphysics of Asma wa Sifat, and this is again one beautiful expression of the civilization of Islam, where they try to connect every single being in existence with the source of being in existence, such as, for example, having recognized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the living, that He possesses the attributes of knowledge, that He possesses al-Qudrah or power, and He possesses will. With all the possession of these perfect attributes, He is likewise the sustainer, al-Razzaq, He is the giver, al-Wahhab, and He is the giver, which includes the giver of forms, al-Wahibu Suwar, yes, the giver of the different forms. So the varying colors and the multiplicity of existences, this derive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's various names, including the fashioner, yes, al-Bari, including Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the Muhyi wal Mumit, that He causes things to live and expire, that He causes things also to go extinct. Yes, entire species may go extinct, and only He knows the wisdom behind all of this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows, yes, that there are certain beauty that can only come about as a result of 1,000-year wait or longer, such as pearls and barnacles and several other things hidden in the depths of the ocean. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows many more things, how, for example, there are certain secrets of the treasures of God upon the face of the earth, and there are certain secrets and the treasures of God that come as a result of social phenomena. And amongst mankind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created some who are obedient and some who are disobedient, and they are acting together, yes, in mutually elicits their individual characters, and such that the ultimate meaning is understood in the philosophy of history of Islam, is understood in the great let us say in the great epic of the prophets and those who opposed their missions. So when we reflect about this, yes, This is the fundamental missing piece in modern education. Yes, education in the modern sense no longer speaks about meaning. Yes, when we speak now of the individual sciences, when biology is taught, when chemistry is taught, when physics is taught, when let us say cognitive science is taught, they are taught as if these individual events, because now they can no longer be spoken of as essences. Yes, these individual events, these individual phenomena, they are spoken of as if they are a stand-alone thing. Yes, they no longer are spoken of in relation to their creator, in relation to their ultimate purpose, in relation to the meaning they serve, in relation to justice. And as we know, within this great theater of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's manifestation of His divine justice, divine wisdom, the great superstore, or the great bearer of the more beautiful aspects of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's beautiful attributes is mankind. And out of this, Imam al-Ghazali develops another aspect of metaphysics, that is what we would call ethical metaphysics, evident in his Maqsad al-Asna fi Sharh Asma'illahi al-Husna, of the highest goal in basically interpreting or in explaining the meaning of the Asma al-Husna, the beautiful names of God, whereby Imam al-Ghazali explains based on the 99 names what their meanings are, and of what aspect can man partake of such beautiful meanings, how man can increase in themselves the beauty of such meanings. And then finally, towards the latter period of the Islamic intellectual tradition, after the Ibn Arabian metaphysics of metaphysics, as we say, yes, it is a metaphysics of the unity of existence, gradually came to be developed the Harakat al-Jawhariyah, the metaphysics of transubstantial motion that intends to bridge, let us say, between physics and metaphysics. All of these, yes, all of the sciences developed by the Muslims, be they something practical like medicine or something theoretical like physics, astronomy, or which is in between the two, mathematics, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, they all have the aim of trying to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better. And this returns to what Imam Abdullah ibn Alawi al-Haddad said in the Book of Assistance, that the reflection or tafkir pertaining to the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation has its ultimate fruit in two things. One, it increases your mahabbah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it induces and increases the state of shukr in yourself, both in the zahir and in the batin sense. Yes, because shukr contains first and foremost recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ni'mah, of His gift, and then it involves a hal, which is the experience of gratitude, and then it involves actions, the af'al, which is to use the ni'mah in a way that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So contemplation of the nature of reality would produce God-fearing men and women who are grateful. And that is a worthy philosophy of science, isn't it? That is a worthy philosophy of education, that we want to educate a generation of scientists and philosophers and thinkers, and generation of economists and political scientists and various other practitioners, that they are all working in concerto to enact their proper role as the bearer of the trust of vicegerency, that they will not harm nature, what more themselves. They will not harm themselves, what more nature. They will adhere to the commandments of religion, and they will avoid the prohibitions, and they will, as the Quran mentioned, as a result of their obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will enjoy on the world a good life, al-hayatun tayyibah. Yes, a prolonged state of beneficial living and a state of bliss, and their ultimate reward, yes, as a result of this contemplation and action, will be the enjoyment of the paradise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Just maybe if you could speak a little bit about introducing meanings to the study of things. For example, to the study of science. How could we practically, actually, even as adults, but more so probably as children or youth, who are learning the physical sciences, how could they consciously actually interact with their topic of study, and use that as a means, as a tool to draw closer to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and to explore actually the meanings of life, of creation as they observe it. Maybe if you can just expand a little bit on that.
I think amongst our teachers, the one that has delved the most into this is Dr. Aditya, and he explains that there are several levels of this that can be done. Particularly, he said it is especially observed in the life sciences. With regards to the life sciences and dealing with the living creation of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, there must always be consciousness that these beings are given the spark of life by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. One possible direction that science can take is towards biomimicry, and biomimicry meaning to say to invent or to develop your tools and your instruments in a manner that respects the ecosystem as a whole, to understand the reliance of one organism on another organism, and for example, the criticisms are especially in the realms of industrial farming. When we study the historical development of farming, or al-filaha within the Islamic societies, this was something that they understood really well. Especially, I remember our friend Ahmad Keela of the UK. He mentioned about the farming practices of older Yemen, that it followed the seasons of the year, and not only did it follow the seasons of the year, they were conscious of when rain came, and they were very careful not to, involve themselves in wastage. That they would build dams in order to sustain the waters such that it would be sufficient for their needs. And they would certainly, as a result of tajribah, know what how to, and this is what they call permaculture. Let us say how individual beings depend on other beings, and so on and so forth. The way science has developed in our times is to such an extent that first and foremost, there is a disrespect of the rhythms of nature. There's a disrespect even with regards to the rights of other organisms and the rights of future peoples. For example, with regards to the usage of pesticides and insecticides that threaten whole-scale loss of organisms, ever so crucial for man's survival. And this is amongst the causes of the environmental crisis that we suffer. And also at the same time, it needs to be guided by maqasid, it needs to be guided by priorities and the differences in value. Let us say animal testing certainly must be let us say indulged in only if it pertains to the higher values of the requirements, and this has something to do with the economics of Islam. Like, for example, within the Ghazalian discussion, certainly we will not allow ourselves to test on animals to harm their lives if the end result is merely to add to cosmetic products. But perhaps it may be justified if it involves the lives of a generation, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the bearings that should come into mind. And when you go into other sciences that involves let us say the realm of the fuqaha, yes, involving marriage, artificial insemination, some of these things were discussed by the earlier fuqaha, but they had the worldview intact. Yes, something that has been lost as a result of secularization is the pushing of is the relegation of religion to the private sphere, and religion no longer now becomes the source of guidance with regards to life important choices. There's the question of the medical aspects like organ donation, euthanasia, and all of these things. Yes, if we have scientists who are aware of the maqasid of the Sharia, they are aware of the proper meanings of things, they would put things into perspective. And some of the and it can involve also the science of health economics and several other disciplines pertaining to economics, where the division of resources, the distribution of resources are concerned. Let us say in industrial economics, yes, they should put the questions in perspective. Like with regards to health economics, sometimes it can, when they discuss, whether to allocate their spending on maintaining the life of the older generation, or to increase pleasure in the youth. All of these things, yes, must be given an alternative Islamic foundation, depending or based on the worldview of Islam. Yes, and there's many more examples we can think of, certainly. Yes.
Jazakallah khair, Ustaz. Inshallah ta'ala, for those of you who are with us still, thank you for your patience and thank you for staying on with us. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll strive to put up this video as soon as possible so that you can follow the classes. I'll try to put it up within the next week, inshallah ta'ala, before the next lesson comes up. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can send us, you can ping us on our FB page, inshallah ta'ala, send us a message and we'll forward the question to Sayyid Muhyiddin, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam Muhammadin wa alihi wasallam. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.